Vanessa Burkowski. I'm past president of RNAO. Thank you for joining us today. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Let me give you a rundown of the structure of the webinar for today. We will hear from the candidates grouped by the position that they are running for. Each candidate will have 5 minutes for opening remarks, followed by a 5-minute question and answer. And IFRA will be keeping time so that we can make sure that everybody gets an equal share. You will see a photograph of each candidate as they were speaking, unless other material has been provided. And I think there are a couple of PowerPoint presentations that will be provided. Is that not correct, Ifra?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. If you would like to ask a question of a candidate, there are 2 ways to do so. I'll open the floor for questions, and you can verbally address your questions to the candidates using the phone. Please first say your name in case there are multiple questions, and I will address you in order. I'll be keeping a list. You can also submit your question by typing in the chat box at the bottom right of your screen. Type your question there, and Ifra, who's at home office, will assist you and read your question. Feel free to type your questions at any point during the webinar as you think of them. Both candidates for each position will have an opportunity to address each question in rotating order. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to a question. And as I said, Ifra will be paying attention to the timing around this so that everybody has equal time both to speak and to respond to questions. She'll also announce when you have 15 seconds left to speak. Okay. So are there any initial questions? Is everybody clear about the process that will follow? Ifra, let me know if you get any questions. If not, I will begin. So our first speaker, and these are the Region 4 representatives, and our first speaker will be Anita Tsang-Sit. So Anita, your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you. I just want to apologize to everybody. I'm a bit sick, so I apologize if I'm a little bit difficult to hear. So I just wanted to thank Ifra and Vanessa for holding this session for us. I also wanted to thank our members for joining us today and that RNAO for providing this opportunity for the candidates. I'm excited that the many great nursing leaders who are running for board of director positions and will surely help to shape the work of RNAO going forward. So a little bit about me. I've been a registered nurse for approximately 12 years. My career has taken me in many different sectors and experiences. I've worked in the hospital, in public health, and more currently in risk management and community housing. Nursing wasn't my first profession. I also have a degree in political science from McMaster, a nursing degree from York University, and a master's of public health from University of Toronto. I've always been very passionate about nursing and its impact on the social determinants of health in our healthcare system. And I think this was mentioned last time in our webinar as well, that a lot of the members running for the board of directors were also RNAO members since they were a student. And this was because I was very passionate about political action and emerging issues in healthcare. The experiences that I've gained in the last 14 years as a member has really provided me opportunities to learn and build on skills that I really don't believe that I could really get just in the workplace setting. I've been an active member of the Peel chapter and moved into different roles from communications officer to chapter president. Through these roles, I was able to learn and expose myself to much more of our profession, from hearing from our members, speaking to politicians, and implementing new programs and initiatives. I have truly experienced the impact of RNAO as politicians would often contact the Peel chapter for our feedback and expertise, such as participating in healthcare roundtables. Being a part of the board of directors was always part of my plan. I wanted to run for Region 4 because I wanted to help further advance RNAO nursing and its pivotal role in the healthcare landscape. The work is what fuels my soul. I have been lucky and blessed with many amazing mentors, previous Peel chapter presidents who have really helped to fuel this passion and work. I was a Hub Fellow in 2017 and had the opportunity to spend time with Doris and the board, which really furthered my interest in this role. My nursing experience in various sectors will definitely help to speak to emerging issues and contribute to dialogues about our position on issues. In particular, my strength in risk management has allowed me to really analyze positive and negative risks and also looking at risk from a holistic perspective. I'm currently a manager of risk operations and enterprise risk management with Toronto Community Housing. And I want to say I really look forward to serving our members and answering any questions that you may have for me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Thanks.
We will now open it up to questions.
If you're on the line, you can press *6 or *7 to unmute yourself to ask a question. There are no questions online at this moment.
Okay. Anyone who has a question for Anita, please feel free. Two ways to do this, either through your phone, just unmute your phone and state your name, please, and ask your question, or you can do it through the chat.
And that's *6 or *7 on your telephone.
Thanks, Ifra.
Marianne with an I. No questions, very informative, thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you.
We're going to allow another minute or so to see if anyone has any other questions or if anyone might join at the last minute before we move on to our next candidate. So if you have any questions or if you'd like to make a comment, please feel free to do so through either the teleconference line or through the chat line. Okay, we'll give it about another 15 seconds or so to see if anyone has any other questions for Anita. And you can do that through teleconference line. You unmute your phone by pressing *7, or you can do it through the chat line. So any questions for Anita or any comments for Anita, please pose them now.
There are no questions online, Vanessa.
Thank you, Ifra. Okay, we're going to move on to our second candidate for Region 4 representative, Marianne Darpino. So, Marianne, you have the floor for 5 minutes, and Ifra will be timing you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy first day of spring. Special thank you to my RNAO colleagues for facilitating this event. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with you as one of the candidates before you for the RNAO board nominations for Region 4. Next slide, please. So over the next 5 minutes or so, I'd like to take some time to tell you a little bit about me, my background, spend some time sharing my experience with RNAO and how I identify them as leaders, and then lastly, share my thoughts on how I believe my role as an RNAO board member can contribute to the vision of RNAO. So next slide, please. So a little bit about me personally. I'm a mother of 2 teenage boys who are at a really interesting, I'll underscore interesting and fun age, one in grade 12 and one in grade 9. And I do get a lot of inspiration from my family. I've lived in Bolton for the last 25 years, which is just about an hour northwest of RNAO, downtown Toronto. I'm a proud RN for 23 years now and have been very grateful for the tremendous opportunities that being a nurse has enabled me to do. I did start my career as a nurse in neuro med surg at Toronto Western. However, it wasn't long before I returned to community and long-term care, where I can say I really earned my stripes. I worked in clinical practice and then moved into more administrative roles, such as nurse educator, director of nursing. Having spent quite a few years in long-term care, I saw a lot of residents that weren't necessarily transitioned well or appropriately placed. So it was this curiosity about wanting to know about how the system worked in the community that led me to a provincial role with Community Care Access Centre. So that was a real eye-opening experience around understanding the healthcare system and impact that transitions of care have on people. One of the other issues that faced long-term care at that time was a real lack of evidence-based practice implementation. So while the resources and tools were available, such as RNAO best practice guidelines, and it was more the know-how and support for implementation that was lacking. So again, it was that curiosity that led me to a role with RNAO as a long-term care best practice coordinator for the Toronto region. And I'm sure you can all attest to what was a personal and professional highlight to work for your own professional association. It was at the heels of a very interesting time in Ontario when Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care committed to investing in the long-term care sector to build capability and quality improvement science. So as a quality improvement advisor, I spent 5 years with Health Quality Ontario, committed to providing the front line, most of them nurses, with the quality improvement knowledge, skills, and resources to implement evidence-based practices using QI science. By the end of the program, we had trained over 2,000 long-term care nurses across Ontario. For me, as a nurse, being able to support the sector from a local, regional, and then provincial level was very satisfying, and just knowing that I was contributing and giving back to the sector. Once the initiative through HQO had sunset, I did transition to my current and national role in patient safety and quality. So I've been with CPSI for the last 6 years, and in fact, today's my work anniversary, coincidentally. I'm a senior director with CPSI and oversee knowledge translation, safety improvement. I have the opportunity to work with many organizations nationally and internationally to embed patient safety content and competencies. Next slide, please. So this is a really great segue. It's a remarkable experience and opportunity when you get a chance to continue to work with your professional association, one that as an RN in Ontario I'm very proud of. I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir when I say that the tremendous advocacy work alone that RNAO has accomplished has led to the organization being recognized as world leaders in evidence-based practice implementation and patient-centered care. A great example of organizational leadership is through a current initiative that RNAO and CPSI are focusing on. RNAO, as those leaders in knowledge translation, implementation science, and social movement thinking, together with CPSI and national and international experts, are developing a resource called Leading Change Toolkit, and this is related to education and innovation in this field. So I have many examples, but this is my best example of how RNAO sets the foundation for nurses to have the best available evidence and tools to ensure that patient care is of the highest quality and safety. Next slide, please. I hope that you've seen that I've sort of tried to paint the picture that I've taken a purposeful path that aligns with my philosophy for nursing leadership, which I believe aligns with how RNAO leads with intention by recognizing the innovations that nurses are contributing to, engaging them to share their voice and shine the spotlight on nurses as leaders, and to collaborate with all levels of the healthcare system to make an ultimate impact for the future of nursing. And throughout my career in quality and safety, my ultimate goal is to contribute to a healthcare system that values and empowers patients, which is all of us, essentially, with the knowledge and courage to speak up for our health, so that as a system we can reduce unnecessary harm. I truly value relationships, and so one of my strongest assets is that of a collaborator and bringing people and partners together to recognize shared purpose, especially in patient safety. And we know how important the role is of the nurse in that perspective. I see my role and contribution to all of you through the board, which is to learn and strengthen our collective impact as leaders in the healthcare system. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm excited, I'm honored to have been considered, and I wish my fellow candidates all the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. We will now open up the floor to questions, and you can pose your questions in two ways. Either unmute your phone by pressing *7 and ask your question, or you can type your question through the chat line. Aoife, again, will be keeping time to ensure that we allow for equity in response times for questions, so let's begin.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm new to this, and so forgive me for my technical ignorance.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
I'm not very technically savvy myself. I need lots of coaching.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, even on my... Can you hear me okay?
Yes, but can I ask who you are? Can you please state your name?
Yes, it's Robin.
Robin, thank you.
Yes, and your candidate's name, because it's not on my screen, is...
Marianne Darpino just spoke.
Marianne, okay.
Yes.
So my question to Marianne is, again, she speaks very eloquently, and she presented herself well. And my question is, she is an educated nurse, from what I hear, but I wonder, and again, knowledge is power. But how do you feel about, the proposals that you're putting forth, RNAO, about education, policy, safety, but do you actually go back into long-term care homes and you're able to observe and evaluate? Again, when we put things on a piece of paper or put it out, it's great, but it's not always followed. And how do you evaluate that?
So, Robin, can you state your question?
Oh, I just did. It didn't come through?
Yeah, I think I'm okay to answer that, Vanessa.
Okay, Marianne, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Robin, thanks so much for your question. I really appreciate it, and it's so relevant. Oftentimes you're right, we hear about these plans, and, we often think that, to sort of quote how we describe people like that in the ivory tower who may not necessarily be connected to the front line and to be able to evaluate. So the perspective that I spoke from the Ontario perspective, and where there was an initiative around providing training in the long-term care sector, there was a very heavy focus on implementation support through coaching. And through that coaching model, we were afforded time to go into the long-term care homes similarly and work with the front line to see exactly how they were implementing evidence-based practice. Similarly to my role at RNAO as a long-term care best practice coordinator, it was that support from RNAO to ensure that we're working hand in glove with the front line to see how these evidence-based practices were not just being implemented for that day or that week, but
sorry, that's time.
Okay, thank you.
Marianne.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Does anyone else have a question for Marianne?
Hi, it's Larissa.
Larissa, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much to both candidates for their great presentations. My question is to Marianne, I believe. I can't see the names, and is just I really appreciate the experience that you bring. I was wondering if you could highlight, and I'm sorry if I missed it, if you could highlight your experience with the RNAO Assembly to be able to provide that context to those who are listening.
So I have participated in previous assemblies in the past, annual general meetings. I do make a point to attend those on a regular basis. I would say I'm not sure if there are some specific details that you wanted me to highlight, just that I have attended them on a as frequent basis as possible.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Felicia
All right.
Joseph.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Felicia Joseph.
Please, go ahead, Felicia.
I just have a comment. I don't have a question for Marian. I just want to say that you provided a very thoughtful, creative, and impressionable presentation. I look forward to hearing more about you. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. I appreciate your comments.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Marianne?
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, this is Kudrat.
Kudrat? Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question for Marianne is that I would like if you can explain to us what's your plan on improving students' involvement in RNAO?
That's a great question. That really does get to the heart of some of the work that I've been doing, even at maybe I'll just start with at national scale. I've been working with the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing, CASN, and one of the roles there was to embed patient safety competencies within the undergraduate curriculum. And so, because I know that our leaders of tomorrow are our students of today, so moving students closer and closer to leadership roles and removing some of those barriers in whatever way that looks is something that I'm very in tune with and that I aspire to do.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Ifra, how much time do we have left for questions for Marianne?
We have about 2 minutes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Marianne? You can ask your question online by unmuting yourself at *7 or type your question in the chat box.
Hello?
Hi.
Are we allowed to ask a second question?
Sure.
Okay, so Marianne, it's Robin again. And the last comment just made me think of a question. And as a senior, mature nurse, life happens and changes. And it's a common theme I hear about is how to encourage, student nurses and young nurses to become involved in whatever. And I think as a very senior nurse, although I've been an RNAO member for many years, I've never gotten involved. And I now am. And the same, I think, what can we do to encourage us as senior nurses to get involved, to have our voices heard?
Mm-hmm. That's a great comment, and I think I think the question you're posing, Robin, is perhaps what are some of my thoughts on that, right? What are some of my thoughts on, how we encourage senior level nurses to connect with students and younger nurses? And I think we need to reach younger nurses in terms of where they are at this age and stage, and one of those is through social media, as a matter of fact, because we know that the younger generation is very much connected to the world of social media. And so I think facilitating and removing some of those barriers for senior level nurses to be able to connect and interact in a way that's meaningful and in a way that can reach that group or that level rather of nurses, I think is really important.
Yes, I need a course. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have probably a minute left, Aoife.
No, that's time.
Oh, that's time. Okay. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation. We're now going to move on to the candidates for the representative of the interest group chairs. And I'll ask Julie Rubel to speak now. Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, IFRA and Home Office, for this opportunity, and thank you for the many active listeners on the line today. This is fantastic. And so my name is Julie Rubel, and it's my intent to apply for the representative of the interest group chairs to the RNAO Board of Directors. So a little bit about myself. So I have been a registered nurse for 15 years this year. And I have, as Anita mentioned, I am also one of those nurses who's been an RNAO member since they were a student and have had the great fortune of being involved with this organization over time. So a little bit about me. So like Marianne, my experience, I also began in long-term care. Certainly spent a majority of my time in long-term care, both providing direct care and also taking a step back and doing some leadership in terms of like a charge nurse position, which we called clinical leader. Then I was fortunate to be involved in a LHIN-funded project to see people transition from hospital to home through an adult day service, which was a really interesting opportunity for me to engage with community-dwelling older adults. And most recently, I've been, for the past 8 years, working as a nurse clinician in the geriatric assessment program locally in Niagara at the Niagara Health System. And so that gives me an opportunity to see older adults and their families while they're in hospital, and also to build geriatric capacity amongst my peers and amongst families by doing some education there as well. If you could advance to the next slide. Thank you. And so my involvement in RNAO has been largely, though more recently through the General Assembly, but as president of Gerontological Nursing Association Ontario, but has largely been through an interest group, which, as I mentioned, is Gerontological Nursing Association Ontario, though much easier to say if we say GNAO. So I have spent the last 4 years as GNAO president, working very hard to enhance the educational opportunities that we provide to this specialty group of nurses, to create networking opportunities, to create opportunities to engage with students through what we call Dinner with a Mentor program, or some student competitions that allowed students to attend conferences just this past 2017 in Ottawa, and then 2018 in Niagara Falls, which we were really proud of. Again, it also provided me the opportunity to be a part of the General Assembly of RNAO, which again continued to build on my understanding of the true impact and influence of RNAO. And once you kind of get the taste of that, it's very you always want more. And so I'm really very excited about the potential to become more involved in the RNAO Board of Directors. Nationally, I've been involved as the Ontario rep with our Canadian Gerontological Nursing Association. So again, getting a perspective of what's happening from care of the older adults at a national level. And I think I mentioned about the provincial conference in 2018, which I was fortunate enough to chair, and created a whole new group of leadership skills, which I didn't possess previously. If you could advance the slide. In terms of how I see myself as a leader, I think, as Marianne said, that I also see myself as being very collaborative and really looking to acknowledge and engage the strengths of others to be able to build success as a team. And I think that's really very important to me. I also tend to be very thoughtful and organized when I make decisions, sometimes to a fault, but I believe that that's a real strength, to be really thoughtful and very organized. I really like to make sure that I understand the perspective of others and can bring those to the table to be able to make an informed decision about next steps. And I think probably my greatest strength as a leader is I lead from a place of passion. So I certainly am very committed and very passionate about our profession, and I'm very proud to be an RNAO member and proud of the work of RNAO. And so again, I'm passionate about that, and certainly, as you can see from my clinical experience thus far, that the care of older adults is also very important, which I think is an important perspective to bring to the table for the RNAO Board of Directors, because certainly older adults are an important healthcare consideration at this point in time. If you could advance to the next slide. There are 6 words that RNAO suggested really are crucial to the work that they do. And so I'd like to just run through those 6 words now and think about how this might relate to my role as the interest group chair representative on the board of directors. So this idea, and certainly I'm not suggesting that any of these things aren't happening now, but rather that there's opportunities for us to build further and continue to do some of this great work. So certainly building, in terms of influencing, building on the existing relationships that interest groups have with over 30 interest groups, the number of relationships that are out there with key stakeholders across sectors really gives us the opportunity to expand the influence that we can have. Looking to inform, so encouraging interest groups to continue to bring their wisdom, their experience with emerging trends and with issues that they see, bring those to the RNAO table so that their influence and impact can go forward when thinking about these trends. Continuing to partner with interest groups to advocate and support initiatives for change. If you could advance to the final slide. And these 3 are particularly near and dear to my heart. So this idea of connecting, connecting with interest groups, so not just RNAO to interest groups, but interest group to interest group, and really thinking about what are some of the common interests and what opportunities exist to collaborate. And so, Larissa, I'll use an example of the pediatric and geriatric nurses interest groups that don't necessarily seem to have much in common, but when both are organizing skills days for their members, then there is an opportunity to collaborate, and I think I look forward to facilitating those types of opportunities. The idea of protect, and in this I mean protecting from a succession planning perspective. So many interest groups may be challenged by having a stable succession plan year over year for their executive, and I think it would behoove us to really be involved in helping interest groups to build stable succession plans. And then finally, to inspire and to really help students. And though I heard, Rob, in your comment about others at different stages in their career as well, to really see the value of participating in the interest group and how that relates to RNAO's work in general. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julie. We'll now open it up to questions for Julie.
Felicia Joseph, I have a question for Julie. In fact, I have 2 questions for Julie.
Oh, thanks, Felicia.
Yeah.
So I'm asking this question from my standpoint as a seasoned nurse. Mm-hmm. Julie, how do you suggest we engage interest groups, engage the novice nurses and the younger nurses to be on their executive or to become members?
I think that's a great question, Felicia, and I think it's something that so just my most recent experience with Gerontological Nursing Association Ontario as an interest group of RNAO is a question that we've been asking ourselves. And so I think the way I see this is the opportunity, and I think there are actually some chapters of RNAO, because I seem to recall having some conversations in a couple of years back that are looking at sort of a mentorship model. So do you have seasoned nurses who are involved in either an interest group or a chapter, in this case the interest group, who then say, you know, novice nurse or student nurse, join our executive as a student member or as a novice member and build sort of a mentoring relationship at that point. I think mentorship is going to be really key. And mentorship, though we think very often about mentorship being important for novice nurses, I think many of us on the line have been touched by mentors at different parts of our career. And so I think this idea of providing sort of formalized mentoring on executives is a way that I see going forward. I hope that makes sense to your question, Felicia.
Okay, thanks. Is it okay for me to ask a second question?
Let's hold on that and see if anybody else has questions, and then we'll come back to you, Felicia. How about that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the line who has a question? And again, if you'd like, you could type it into the chat.
No questions on the chat, Vanessa.
Okay, thank you, Ifra. Anyone else on the line have a question for Julie? Okay, Felicia, let's go back to your second question, please.
Okay. So, Julie, in light of the adverse publicity involving care for older adults and individuals in long-term care, do you believe that PSWs should be regulated? And what can we do as an association to help this?
Thank you. That's a great question. That may require more than 1 minute to answer. So certainly, in my opinion, unfairly so, long-term care seems to get the brunt of much of the negative publicity and tends to see a lot less of the good things that are happening in long-term care. And I'm sure many of you can attest to all the great things work that's happening in long-term care homes and the vital work that personal support workers play, the vital role that personal support workers play. I think there is some merit to having personal support workers be regulated. In terms of what do I see RNAO's role in helping to facilitate that regulation. I mean, certainly we would have the opportunity to be able to use some of our influence to be able to help perhaps facilitate some of those conversations between the relationship that we have with key stakeholders and the emerging personal support worker groups that are working towards this same goal. So I think there's an opportunity to be able to strengthen and build relationships with those emerging PSW groups to help facilitate some of those conversations.
Thank you, Julie. That's time.
Thank you. I had a feeling it might take more than a minute. Thank you.
Thanks
for your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any further questions for Julie?
No.
Hello, do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay, could I have your name, please?
Yes, my name is Kudra.
Okay, Kudra, please go ahead.
Hi, Julie. I have known Julie since students, and I think when I see you, when I hear you speak, you have very great passion for the older adults. But right now, my question to you is that right now I am working in the acute care setting, and I am a certified geriatric nurse. Many times people wonder why you are a geriatric nurse in acute care, but from my own experience, I see that our older adults in acute care, they are not, nurses are good, they are doing their best, but many people lack that skill to take care and facilitate comfort for older people in acute care. What can we do as a group to make sure that nurses in acute care have geriatric training?
Thank you, Kudra, for the question. Thanks. It's good to hear your voice, and congratulations on your certification as a gerontological nurse. I think so certainly my current role in acute care suggests a very similar experience for me as well, right? That many nurses in acute care don't see themselves as requiring or providing specialized care to older adults. However, many are, and they're to their detriment. Unfortunately, they don't have the same specialty that you and I do. Yet we're asking them to provide that sort of level of care. So I think that there is a significant opportunity for us to continue to advocate for additional geriatric-specific competencies in education. And so I know through some of my work with the national group that there are ongoing conversations in terms of adding additional gerontological competencies to schools of nursing curriculum. And so I think continuing to add RNA's voice to that conversation would be one such opportunity. And then I think helping acute care nurses, and this is not an easy thing to do, but helping acute care nurses to understand that they in fact are gerontological nurses, and no, they may not have the same specialty or passion for the work as you and I do, Kudra, but there is opportunity to be able to gain many skills that will help them in their day-to-day practice, and through gaining those skills that they'll be able to help to improve outcomes for older adults, which we know without those skills can be more difficult to achieve.
Thank you, Julie. That's time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next candidate, and it is Larissa Gadsby. Larissa, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Just pardon me, I'm overcoming my own issues vocally, so just bear with me. I will be as strong as I can. Thank you so much to all of you for joining this afternoon and taking time to really get to know us as candidates. It's an awesome privilege to be able to run again for the Board of Directors position, specifically to be the representative of the interest group. It's really all I can say is such a privilege, and I thank you for your time and for the other candidates that have given their time to be here and have this awesome discussion. So a little bit about me. I've been a nurse for the last 9 years, and my specialty is in pediatrics. And I most recently have spent the last 2 years as a nurse practitioner. My experience in pediatric varies from general pediatrics to adolescent medicine to acute oncology, and now I'm working in an outpatient area, really just focusing on our patients have a lot of chronic illness and specifically neurological related concerns. And so I've had the privilege of really being all over this hospital where I work to be able to see the issues from a variety of perspectives. And in the role that I'm in right now as a nurse practitioner, being able to be at the point of diagnosis and decision making in terms of making plans for patients, and really also connecting with the community is a large part of my role in terms of equipping and empowering community providers to be able to support these complex patients within primary care. And so I'm definitely very passionate about that. So thankful for all of the experience and everything that I've learned from my colleagues and my patients. My leadership experience really stems from RNAO. As a student, I attended my last year of nursing school, as it seems to be a theme. I attended the Board of Directors placement, and it was incredibly inspiring to me to see just nursing leaders from all sectors coming together with one common goal, and really is to speak out for nursing, and not only just for us as professionals, but really on behalf of Ontarians and for the health of all. And I think when we keep that our focus, it helps us ensure that we are maintaining the values and making decisions based on those values, even if, sometimes we create a little noise with what we're advocating for, because even though it might be challenging, it is what's right and what patients need. And so I'm very proud to be able to have learned that and seen that throughout my time with RNAO. I have been the most active within interest groups. About 5 years ago, joined the Pediatric Interest Group as their education officer and was responsible for running conferences and also was starting our student workshops, which were incredibly successful at bringing in students to provide supplementary support for them, as pediatrics, similar to the gerontological nursing aspect, is very, it's not something that's covered as well in their schooling. And so with students that have those interests, being able to provide them the additional support and network them, connect them with practicing pediatric nurses has been amazing. And I was the president there, really revitalized that interest group and brought them back within the RNAO assembly and really brought that voice back to the table, which was incredible. And I'm so proud of the work that that group continues to do. And so from there, I have spent the last 2 years as the Region 4 Board of Directors representative, and it really has been the highlight of my career to be able to be around the board table, pushing and advocating for the needs that are important to us as nurses and to our patients or clients, depending on where you're working. And during that time, I also worked alongside Home Office and my colleague May very closely to, I'm one of the founding co-chairs, May and myself actually, of the Nurse Practitioner Interest Group, which is very exciting. And actually right now they are hosting the very first Nurse Practitioner Institute, and there's over 75 nurse practitioners there. I was unwell, so unable to attend with them, but I'm just so thankful for that opportunity because the nurse practitioner voice is also very important, as are all of our voices. And so through those experiences, I've just been able to see the unique challenges that interest groups have based on their geography at maintaining executives and really bringing in and keeping things active. But also we have a really interesting opportunity because we are linked based on specialty and interest, that we are able to reach a whole other group of nursing than what you can within a chapter or a region or whatnot. So I think that we're seeing things come into fruition in terms of being able to bring the interest groups into decision making, back at the table with the change in board structure. Now that we no longer have the member at large roles, we're really leaning on the interest groups, and they now have direct board liaisons to really be able to glean from their expertise. And so that's something that I would definitely am very passionate about seeing to fruition and seeing through, and making sure that we really can link arms beside one another and really strengthen our assembly and our association as a whole. As a leader, I am very much a relationship builder. I seek to understand various aspects of a situation and make sure that I know the risks and all of that's involved with making decisions. And I think that when we can hold our opinions with an open hand and collaborate together, that's when the most powerful decisions can be made, when we look at things and have those challenging conversations around the board table from various perspectives. Iron sharpens iron, and so that is when the most powerful policy decisions can be made, and we can step forward as a collective group. So I look forward to your questions. It would be such an honor to be able to represent the interest groups in this way. I hope that you all will take time to vote on the one member, one vote system, and I look forward to seeing all of you at the AGM. Thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Larissa. I'll open it up now for 5 minutes of questions for Larissa, and we will take your questions either by phone. You can unmute your phone by pressing *7, or you can type your question in the chat line. So questions for Larissa.
There's no questions on the chat box.
Hello.
Hello. If you could hold for 1 minute on the line, what's your name?
Robin.
Thank you, Robin. If you could hold for 1 minute, there's a question on the chat line that I'm going to pose to Larissa. This question.
Oh, sorry, Vanessa. There's no questions on the chat box.
Okay, there's no questions in the chat box. So, Robin, please go ahead.
Hi, Larissa. Unfortunately, something happened to my phone and I missed some of your conversation, but this may be not an appropriate question for this, and it may be a question for all members. But the last member that brought up the question about, being in acute care and nurses not necessarily being trained in gerontology, and it just made me think of a question that I think in many areas you have to be an expert in everything. And I'm wondering, with the RNAO funding, is this something that yourself or any of the candidates would look into? Because RNAO has very strict guidelines for reimbursement, and yet I think there are many courses that would be valuable to many nurses, which again, knowledge is power. Is that something that you would consider visiting?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. It's a really good point that you raise in terms of the value of really continuing our development as nurses, and as well the cost of some of those programs can be a hindrance. And I think just listening to some of the other questions that have been posed earlier, I think I would build off of what Julie has said, because we are both around the table as interest group chairs at the time when this was brought forward. But I think that we have to, in today's fiscal climate and just being resourceful as nurses, we can continue to look for unique ways to seek out that education. And so I think that there are actually a number of interest groups that do provide bursaries and awards for continuing education. The Nursing Education Initiative that's provided through RNAO is excellent to go through as well. But I think things that various interest groups have tried is putting on things like skills workshops, putting on things like through the Nurse Practitioner Interest Group, we do monthly webinars that are free of charge for our members, that they're able to get additional learning. And so I think to be able to come together, that is something that I feel really strong about, and I have seen the great success in both of those models. And so I think that while not only strengthening the funding, we can also look at new ways. And so what I would commit to doing
Thank you, Larissa. That's time.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Okay, does anybody else have a question for Larissa? Any further questions for Larissa? We can take them by phone if you unmute your phone at *7, or you can type them in through the chat box. All right. Any final questions for Larissa? Okay, hearing no other questions for Larissa, I think we have 5 minutes left. So I will open up the questions, and if you have a question, I'll go in order of each of the candidates and ask each candidate to answer the same question. Does anybody have a question that they would like to pose to for response by each of the candidates?
Hi, it's Robin.
Go ahead, Robin.
So for all candidates, if you had only one goal, what would that be?
Thank you, Robin. So let's start with Anita. Anita, you have 1 minute.
That's a great question, Robin. I didn't actually go into a lot of detail, like in terms of some of the work that I've done with the RNAO Peel chapter, but one of the things that I'm very passionate about is actually linking new grads with more seasoned nurses for mentorship opportunities, and I think this is like a goal that I would want to continue in the role as board of directors, because I think there's a lot of value and knowledge that can be shared with seasoned nurses, with new nurses, because as we know, a lot of new nurses leave the profession often quite early. And so I think it's a great opportunity for mentorship, knowledge sharing, and so I think that would be one of my top things that I would want to do. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Anita. And now from Marianne, response to the same question, please.
Thanks so much, Robin, for the question. Just given my background in patient safety and quality, I think my niche area is around, and as you've said it, providing that knowledge. Knowledge is power and capability building. So, continuing to embed patient safety competencies within curricula, building leaders, building nursing leaders for tomorrow is certainly an area that I'm very passionate about, and bringing Ontario nurses front and center in that process, because I believe Ontario nurses are very much leading the way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. And the same question to Julie.
Thank you, Robin, for the question. So I think if I had one goal, it would be that idea of connecting, and so connecting interest groups. And what Larissa said really struck a chord with me, and the idea of getting creative, because yes, ideally there would be more funding and more opportunities, but in finite budgets, then we have to be thoughtful and get creative. And I think the idea of connecting interest groups with each other, so specifically thinking about my role on the board of directors with the interest group representative, thinking about how you might connect interest groups to be able to share education and to, again, identify those common opportunities and to be able to build on the expertise of one interest group with opportunities to network and connect with members from other interest groups with similar interest.
Thank you, Julie. And Larissa.
Yeah, I think we all have a very similar goal, which is very exciting to see us as all kind of coming through. So for me, it really is, my vision would be that every RNAO member, whether you've been a nurse for 40 years, 50 years, whether you're a specialist in the north, whether you're a student, whether you're a new grad, that every single member would find an aspect of the association that draws them in. So that is creating connection in creative ways. Maybe that's putting through mentoring. Maybe that's looking at the mid-career nurse and creating an opportunity for them that is engaging to get them involved. I just think we can never forget that we are a membership-driven organization, and we need to ensure that each member, when they look at RNAO and why they want to be a member, that there's something for them. And so I think that would be my goal, is just moving forward, the things that we're pushing through at the board table, that we remember each member and making sure that the diversity we have in our province and location, specialty, experience, that everyone has an opportunity to get involved.
Okay. Thank you, Larissa. In closing today, I want to thank each of the candidates for participating, and special thanks as well to all of the members, not only for their participation but for their thoughtful questions. This webinar and future webinars will be archived on MyRNAO, and you can find a link to them on the elections page. One member, one vote will open on March 26th at noon and end on April 11th at noon. Please remember to vote and remind your nursing colleagues to vote as well. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you at the AGM. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.